Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Virtual House Church. I am your host, Rob Skiba, and let's go ahead and jump in here. If you are new to the Virtual House Church, you can go to virtualhousechurch.com is our primary website. And this was a website that was created back in 2012 and 13. There we go. And it's in the process of getting an overhaul here. I'm updating it as we go along, so all the links all the way up to this week's study, which is Leviticus week 28, will take you to the new website. So, for instance, if you click on the About Us there, or Who Are We, it takes you to a page that describes Sheila and I and what we're about, what our ministry is about. And our Virtual House Church store has a bunch of stuff there for you. Calendars, don't order this one yet. We're still waiting for Kevin and Amanda to hopefully get a new calendar for 2021. This one's still good to the end of this month, but after that it'll be run out of time there for you. So hold off on buying this if you're interested. This one here is, and you can click on it for a free PDF. This is a calendar that Juan Carlos put together that is current, so this one is good for this year, 2021. And again, click on that for a free PDF. The workbooks are available through Amazon there. You can typically get them faster, usually through them, or cheaper if you order all of them through us together. I will say that I know that a couple of orders have come in this past week that I haven't been able to fill yet because I'm waiting for my orders to come in from Amazon. We are out of stock at the moment, so if you haven't got it, it's either in the mail or I'm waiting for stock, so please be patient on that. And if you'd like to get it instantaneously, you can get the PDF version of it right there. And the Ephraim Awakening DVD-ROM has all the resources you see here, including the PDFs of the workbooks. So that's all available to you in the store there. And our statement of faith, just what it sounds like, what we believe here at the Virtual House Church. Defending Messiah is a very comprehensive webpage. If you or somebody you know is questioning the validity of Yeshua, Jesus Christ, as the Messiah, this page is for you. There are lots of videos here and content defending Messiah, and I really tried to do most of my defense from the Old Testament because a lot of these people who want to dismiss Messiah won't recognize the New Testament. And I'm like, you know what? If I can't defend him from the Old Testament, then do I really know him anyway? Because Yeshua himself, on the road to Emmaus, he started with Moses and the prophets to defend himself, to say who he was. And Paul, the apostle, did the same thing. In the end of the book of Acts, he's in a rented house, and it says the same thing. He's beginning with Moses and the prophets to explain who Yeshua was. And when the Bereans were searching these things out that the apostles were bringing to them, they weren't reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the epistles of Paul. They were reading the Torah and the prophets. So I have taken it upon myself to try to be able to do the same thing, to defend Messiah from the Torah and the prophets, and I would suggest if you haven't done so that you might want to look into that as well. We need to be able to do the same thing they did. I mean, if it worked for them, it should work for us, right? So, all right, so then we have Coming Out of Babylon. Link is another very comprehensive web page here with lots of information for people who are new and what does it mean to come out of Babylon, keep the Sabbaths and the feasts, and what about the feasts, what are they about, and everything. And lots of videos, as you can see here, and books, resources for you are available on this page. And Torah Fellowship, if you're looking to fellowship with people actually beyond what we're doing here online, you can go to this page here. It takes a few seconds to load. This is a plugin that 119 Ministries put together that has all these little blue tags all over the place. Let's see, where are we going to go today? How about, let's go to India. We'll go to India today. And, basically all you do is you click on one of these, doop, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. This person here, their contact information is right there, so that's how it works. You just click on one of those little blue tabs, and we'll give you the contact information. You can reach out and maybe connect with somebody in your area. And look at this, folks. If you live in the United States, wow, I mean, you really got to zoom in to actually find spaces between the blue tags there. So lots of people in the United States to potentially fellowship with here. What about Paul? Many times people who come to the Virtual House Church or listen to this online, when it posts in the archives on YouTube, they'll start calling me a heretic and all kinds of other things, saying I'm spitting on grace and whatnot, and they'll try to quote Paul to justify their position. And my position is, first of all, we here at the Virtual House Church, we love, appreciate, and respect Paul, and we believe that his writings are just on par with the rest of them. They are inspired scripture, in our opinion. And but I would say you shouldn't read or even think about quoting one sentence that Paul wrote until you thoroughly understand what Paul read, studied, and understood himself. Once you do that, then you go back and read Paul, and he'll take on a whole new light for you. And so these are some frequently asked questions and comments that deal with the writings of Paul. This is all stuff I had written back in mostly 2013 through 15. So you can go through all that right there. And if you're going to throw the book of Galatians at us, first I would say, hey, please go read this blog right here. If you're one of those that thinks that we're a foolish Galatian for having the audacity to want to obey God, well, this page is for you. Spend some time on this page right here. Hebrew calendars. This, again, has the calendars there. I need to update this once Kevin and Amanda get us a new one. And this is, again, Juan Carlos's right here. I found another resource the other day right here. Let me see. If you click on that, it takes you to this, and you can click on the list portion right here. And this is, I guess, kind of a standard Jewish calendar. And they have stuff here. I don't know if they're messianic or not, so to keep that in mind, but you can go through there, and they have their Torah portions on here as well. So let's see, we're in April 17, so they have this one right here, and you click on it, and this is their commentary and references and stuff like that. So another interesting resource for you I just found. I thought, I'll put it in here for people. Issues dealing with the Sabbath are right here, and Passover right here, some videos and stuff on that. And let's see, a little bit of unleavened bread and stuff it looks like in here. And I'll update this more as we get closer to Pentecost, and of course the fall feasts. I'll add stuff to this page for that as well. On the right hand side, there's a search window here, so you can look up keywords in there, and it should find it on the website. 2 audio clips here I think you'll find are a blessing to you is Yahuwah's Love Letter and Psalm 91. If you haven't listened to those, I recommend it. I think you'll really enjoy those right there. Bible study tools that I use all the time and recommend are blueletterbible.org, biblegateway.com, bible.cc, bible.is. I have these up on my browser window all the time, usually in multiple windows. I'm always referring to these sites. Good resources for you there. I also recommend the Aramaic English New Testament Bible right here by Andrew Gabriel Roth. Really good resource there. So if you'd like to support us, we are a listener-supported ministry, so we can't do what we do without people like you, and I truly mean that sincerely. Sheila and I really wish to thank all of you who have supported us in the past. We wouldn't have made it without you, so thanks so much for those who have supported us, and if you'd like to continue to support us, you can do so with this button right here or to this address right here. And note, we are not a 501c3, so I can't give you any kind of tax-deductible receipt or anything like that. But this means we are free to talk about what we want to without the regulations of the government. So that's why we're not a 501c3, among other reasons. Other ministries that we enjoy, Your Living Waters commentary right here. These are the commentaries I referred to by Ardell. Really good stuff there. Torah Family, Steve Mutria. New to Torah is Zach Bauer. 119 Ministries. Unlearn is Lex Meyer and Jim Staley's teachings right there. So I recommend you check those out as well. All right, this week's study. This is a short reference, quick reference page right here. Has a audio player, so if you want to hear the scriptures from the Torah, prophets, and New Testament,
the Lord spoke to Moses, saying,
click on that right there, and it'll be read to you. It takes about 30 minutes to go through this week's reading. Then there's a ministry called Parsha in 60 seconds. Parsha is the Hebrew word for study. They distill the Torah portion study down to 60 seconds. We'll watch that in a minute here. And then this is the live stream we're doing right now. So once we are finished, it will archive and remain on this page until next Fridays, typically late Friday evenings when I update this page. So this will be there all week long until I update it for next week. And then this big button right here takes you to the actual study page. This is where you go into a lot more depth, and if you're viewing this on a mobile device or a cell phone, tablet type of thing, you can click on that and it resizes for you. It becomes much more user-friendly for, like, on a tablet, it might be like that, or a cell phone. It's really a lot better for, like, scrolling and stuff like that. So a much more user-friendly version of the site for mobile devices. And again, this one's for a computer like where I'm using right now. These are the scriptures. You can click on those, take you to the Bible Gateway. Again, there's the player. Let's go ahead and watch the Parsha in 60 seconds, and we'll get started here.
Shalom and welcome to Parsha in 60 seconds. Today's portion is from Leviticus 14:1 through 15:33. It is called Metzora, which means one being diseased. God gave a cleansing ritual for skin disease. It involves 2 live clean birds, cedar wood, crimson stuff, and hyssop. 8 days later, another sacrifice would be made. God explained the ritual for cleansing a house with an eruptive plague. It involves some major remodeling, and some birds as well as other things. God gave the ritual for all sorts of male and female uncleanliness. Many of these rituals involved a lot of cleaning and clothes washing, and a week-long process which ends with a sacrifice. Cleanliness was very important to God. God told Moses and Aaron to put the Israelites on guard against uncleanliness, lest they die by defiling God's tabernacle. And that is Metzora in 60 seconds.
Yes, this one deals with bodily emissions and various forms of uncleanliness. So here are some of the studies we did in the past from 2013, the audio right there, 2014. There was nothing from 2017 or 18 that I could find in my archives, so I don't have that there for you today. 2021, that's this one that we're doing right now. This is studied by the Way Biblical Fellowship with JP and Charlie, so you might want to check out their commentary on it. Again, Ardell, Your Living Waters, this week's commentary that she did. Always good stuff there. Highly recommend you click on those links. View them, download them, print them, put them in a workbook. You'll be glad you did. Lots of good stuff there. The same 3 questions, notes from previous year's studies that we've done are all on this page right here. And this is where I spent some time in the 2014 broadcast talking about when I had first realized that first day of the week, where most people who are considered themselves Christians would believe that, well, see, the disciples met on the first day of the week, so Yeshua rose on the first day of the week, and that's Sunday, and so we should be worshiping Sunday, and so they transferred the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday. Well, if you go look on tools like BibleGateway.com, BlueLetterBible.org, or BibleHub.com, Bible.cc, you'll see that the Greek is miaton sabbaton. Well, sabbaton is just what it sounds like, Sabbath. Every time the word Sabbath is translated in English, it's coming from the Greek word sabbaton. And the Greek word for week, I think, is heptoma or something like that. It's not sabbaton. And the word day in your English Bible, like King James will put words in italics that were inserted by the translators. Well, go look in your Bible. Where it says first day of the week, the word day is italicized, which means the translators inserted that word there. The word is first of the Sabbaths, or one time on Saturday. You can take it either way. Miaton Sabbaton, first of the Sabbaths, or one time on Saturday. And this blog right here is when I first started to realize that, and I show you right here, this is the Greek right there, Miaton Sabbaton, first and Sabbaton. And I go through all of this, and what I realized is, we're in the counting of the Omer right now, and that's the only time when you count Sabbaths. You start counting the number of Sabbaths leading up to Pentecost. And many of the cases, if not all the cases, where Miaton Sabbaton shows up, it is in the time period after Passover, between Passover and Pentecost, which is when they would be counting the Sabbaths. So it's very likely that the references here are first of the Sabbaths that the disciples are meeting. First of the Sabbaths. So go into all that right there if you're interested in checking that out. That resource is on that page right there. No, your King James Bible will tell you that she shall bring 2 turtles. No, don't be bringing turtles. You should be bringing turtle doves. You bring turtles and you're going to have a problem. People are going to laugh at you, and it's probably a disgrace. So interesting thing about the bird, if you look at the requirement on the bird, it seems to be something like this. So we were talking about that in one of the broadcasts, kind of interesting, for cleansing the lepers. More Excellent Way, it's a really cool book by Henry Wright, dealing with cleansing of disease and disease having a spiritual root to them. So anyway, these are the resources I have for you on this week's study page. Let's go ahead and jump in and see what other insights we can find. I am happy to be joined once again by Jake Grant and Juan Carlos. Hey guys, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
All right.
Shabbat Shalom.
All right. Well, I'll stop talking now and turn the microphone over. Let's see, Jake, you're in the middle here, so why don't we start with you? What were your insights on this week's Torah portion, Prophets, and New Testament?
Yeah. So just a preface. This week we're kind of abroad, so I'm just kind of streaming in from my phone. So I don't have all the access to tools online and stuff that I usually do, but I will try to go the best off my memory, and kind of maybe we can bounce around conversation style today. So this Torah portion, I think last week there was something at the very end of that Torah portion, and I was reading through the TorahPortions.ffoz kind of commentary, and usually Tazria is read alongside this Torah portion. Like they pair them together in their readings. And there's something I noticed at the very end of last Torah portion I wanted to mention before we get into this week that I see an interesting connection there with, and it's in regards to the garments and how to distinguish when there's this disease within the garment itself. And I think there's a fascinating connection there with how leprosy. We can kind of make the association that leprosy and these ailments that appear on people are manifestations of a sin that somebody has committed. That's why whenever they come and present themselves, they are to make a sin offering and that other offering because that leprosy represents a sin in their life, and that's why they offer a sin offering when they are then declared clean. And I find it interesting at the end of our Torah portion, Tazria, last week, it talks about the garments and how you're to test these garments for the corruption that's in the garment. And you cut out the piece that's infected or whatever, and you throw it away, and then you watch the garment and you see if it manifests any more corruption. And I couldn't help but to make some connections there with some language in the book of Revelation. Yeshua is talking to the seven churches, and we see recurring language in there about don't defile your garments, don't defile your garments. And so I wanted to throw that connection out there, and how there might be something deeper to this in relation to these wedding garments we see as in a New Testament context that are so important to have unspotted. And if they become spotted, you're to wash them and get them white and ready for the coming of the king. And in the same way, we see in the parable of the wedding feast, you have the man that shows up and he doesn't have his wedding garments on, right? And the man without the wedding garments is thrown out. And in the Torah portion, you see that if the corruption, which we can liken to maybe a type of sin that's part in our wedding garments, if it starts to continue to reappear within the garments, they're told to take those garments and burn them. And I saw an interesting connection there with the New Testament Book of Revelation style commentary on, hey, be sure to make sure your wedding garments aren't defiled, and purify your garments in the washing of the word, right? And so I wanted to make that connection there because I find this study of leprosy, and as we go into this Torah portion, which is the name of it actually means leper or whatever, that this really does reveal an interesting concept regarding sin in our lives and how we are to treat and be very careful with bringing sin into the camp. Because if we treat sin as bad as a creeping cancer or as a boil thing that appears on our skin that we could possibly spread to other people, how careful will we be, if we take that same mindset and that wariness of leprosy and we apply that to sin and bringing sin into our homes and bringing sin into our garments, right? And because whenever we read through these passages about clean and unclean, once again, it is important to recognize, being unclean is not necessarily a sin. But I do find that at the end of this Torah portion this week, it does finally clarify. We pointed out several weeks ago that the Targums actually identify the reason you don't want to be unclean is because if you are unclean and then you approach the holy thing or you touch the set apart thing, then it becomes a sin. And so this whole precaution of making sure you're not in an unclean state is so important when you're living amongst the manifested presence of Yah on earth, right? And how interesting it is that these things in the future, they might become significant once again. If he comes and he's dwelling among us in the New Jerusalem, and all the nations that are left over after the day of the Lord will have to come up to the feasts, and if they don't, it won't rain on them. But how will it be important in that context, in a future context, to approach our King in a worthy manner, and not try to approach him in a state of uncleanness or impurity, and how that really does kind of make an archetype that parallels with the sin nature of man, and how we need to make sure we're not we don't have corruption in our home, and if you do, like, there's this whole breakdown of how to remove the sin from not the sin, the leprosy or the creeping leprosy from the wall, and then you plaster it over, and then you watch and you see if it appears again. It's just interesting there. But some of the things that really stood out to me in this Torah portion that I wanted to maybe bounce around with you guys and see if you had any perspectives on is it goes into the cleansing of somebody who's declared clean from leprosy, and the sacrifices that are made. You have the 2 doves, right? But I really find it interesting. I wanted to focus in on when they put the blood of the offering on the earlobe, the right thumb, and the big right toe of the person who is then to be declared clean. Because this does parallel with something we see with the priesthood, and how Aaron and his sons are initiated into the priesthood, right? And just off the top of my head, and kind of speculating what the significance of the blood being put on the ear, on the thumb, and on the big toe of the foot, right now, my thoughts regarding this and why it could be very significant is, perhaps the blood of the purification, right, being put on that right earlobe represents cleaning up the hearing, so that your ears are opened to the truth of God's word, and perhaps our hands represent our actions, our efforts, and that's why we see the premise of bind his word on your hand and put it as frontlets between your eyes, our thoughts and our actions. And so the blood of the purification being put on their thumb, could that represent them walking and doing righteousness? And so we have hearing righteousness, we have doing righteousness with our hand, and then as well as the blood on the big toe. And what could the blood on the big toe mean? Well, we know sandals scripturally are a representation of a message, because when you go somewhere to spread a message, you walk, and you're walking on your sandals. And so, the feet carry you to deliver a message. And so, could, the ear be, hearing a righteous message, the thumb be doing righteousness, and the toe be spreading that righteous message to others? And so, that's just some thoughts that maybe, I'm wondering what your guys' impressions on the significance of the blood of the purification being put on those locations, how it is the same thing that was done to Aaron and his sons as they were entering into the priesthood role. Go ahead.
I've had discussions in our various house church settings on this, and I think that that's good. I think there are probably very much spiritual aspects to it, like that the seeing, doing, walking, these are all like metaphorical things that can be illustrated in this way. But as I started looking into things like essential oils and even acupuncture for that matter, that there are certain nerve endings, meridians, if you want to call them that, or various aspects to the human anatomy that are very important and that have connections. I forget what goes where to what, but like certain toes connect to certain organs in your body, so you put oil on this and it somehow affects that organ, if you've got a kidney problem or a liver problem or whatever problem. And since a lot of these diseases are they're physical diseases that manifest in the flesh and in the organs and in different places in your body, that there may be other reasons for it. And some of these oils that are, and I think one of them, I think it's sandalwood or something, and I can't stand the smell of it. I'm like, oh, this smells so bad. Like Sheila likes it. She likes it. I'm like, oh, that smells so horrible. But that there are reasons for putting oils on certain parts of the body because of the connections that those parts of the body have to various other things in your body and organs and things of that nature. So there may be both a metaphorical, spiritual, and even physical reason for those particular locations of the anointing.
Yeah, it just goes so deep. I mean, the other process is they're to pour oil in the left hand, and he's to take that oil and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord. And I wonder, what do these things mean, and what mental process does it activate in the minds of these people that are going through this cleansing process and being declared clean, or being presented to the priests? When they were doing these actions, which today we're not walking these things out, but when they were, what spiritual lessons is this teaching in their mind as they're walking them out? And it's very fascinating, very interesting.
Yeah. There was there's another. I know you are familiar with Dr. Alfonso Munzo. You've probably met him at some of the conferences and stuff like that. I need to get him on the show. I really do. It's been a long time. Every time I see him at a conference, I'm like, dude, I got to get you on the show. And somebody in the chat room mentioned him and said the oil on the earlobe and thumb and big toe might have something to do with Dr. Alfonso Munzo's what he's uncovered with his Olive Tov system. Probably so. I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, none of these things are random, and I guess that's the main takeaway from this, is that whenever Yahuwah is giving specific instructions, he's not just saying, "Hey, I think it'd be cool. Why don't you put it on your earlobe? That'd be fun." That there's actually a reason for it. To us, we look at it just seems so bizarre. What, your earlobe, your big toe? What? It just seems really what? But he knows how he made us. He knows what's in the oils, and he knows how our bodies are wired, and I think Dr. Munso is really onto something with his work right there. So in fact, Andy Hoy was on my show this past Wednesday. He's doing, I think tomorrow he's got a model of the tabernacle in the wilderness that I think it was a 1/8 scale or something, I forget, but it's a scaled down model of it. It's a pretty large model that's being shown at a church somewhere, and he was talking about how with all of the various aspects in the ribs that make up the dome, the support structure of the dome, he was saying that as he was studying the tabernacle model, that there were so many correlations in the Paleo Hebrew with the anatomy, the human anatomy. And so I asked him in the show, I said, man, have you talked to Dr. Munso about this? Because, maybe you two need to really bring your research together, because all the stuff that Andy's learning about the tabernacle, the circular dome tent model, and what he's learning over here, there may be something to it. And who knows? And maybe we may get the real answer for this earlobe and big toe situation right there. But, I didn't know if you had talked to him at all about this, or if you knew anything more about it.
Yeah, no, I have. I did watch through a presentation of Munzo at the Isaiah 46:10 conference, and I know he has associated various aspects of the body with the different Hebrew letters, and each letter has its own frequency, and he's kind of interpolated how those frequencies might be used for healing, measures and treating different areas of the body that are associated with these Hebrew letters. So very interesting. And I love that you were mentioning connecting Munzo with Andy Hoy, and it's something that I've started to realize. As Sierra and I have been traveling, we've been visiting some friends. We've been holed up for the past 4 months, with the baby, and so now we're just finally getting out. And I'm starting to realize kind of a significance to those verses in Hebrew that Paul or whoever wrote Hebrews said. He says, "Do not forsake the assembling together of yourselves, even more so as you see that day approaching, but spur each other on to good works." And I'm really realizing now more and more that in a lot of ways, not each and every one of us can have everything figured out. And so the importance of connecting people with different insights and different understandings of the Word of God, and going and kind of seeing what has God spoken to you and what has He revealed to you, because on the off chance that I'm not hearing everything, which is very likely, I want to know what he's speaking to you. And whenever you have all of these people that he's speaking to individually, and you come together and you have these revelations and these amazing things that he's teaching you on an individual basis, and you share those with others, that's when you make some really amazing connections. And we're starting to realize that, because this is probably, we're actually at another friend's house. We traveled down from Tony's house and now we're down at Ian Chadrick's house, who does the reality distortion effect and stuff. And it's really cool, because we're traveling around and I'm getting to hear kind of the various things that Yah's like really speaking to people really heavy, and like it's just really exciting, because it gets me even more pumped up, and I'm realizing that that's why it's so important for us to have this premise of brotherly love. Like, why is brotherly love such a good quality for the Church of Philadelphia in the book of Revelation? Is, perhaps it's because they were willing to hear their brother out and to allow Yah to speak through other people, and to speak to them through other people. And if you are so up on yourself and so high and mighty in your own knowledge and understanding, and that causes you to cut ties, then you might miss whenever Yah starts to speak to his people, because you don't want to have anything to do with that camp or this camp. And I just love that premise of whenever you bring people that are being revealed these significant things in the Word, and you bring them together, and those revelations get to kind of bounce back and forth off each other, it really makes me think of, that's how, whenever he does start to speak to his people strongly and starts to pour out his Spirit and give revelation and dreams and visions and direction and those above and beyond type things, in the off chance that, I might not be hearing his voice at that moment, if I love my brother and I'm willing to seek them out and hear how God's dealing with them, then that's how God can speak to me through them,
Oh, yeah,
and,
absolutely. There's the first time I saw a real tangible expression of that, of what you're saying about the coming together and different revelations and stuff like that, was when I first heard about the seven mountain prophecy. Now, let me just preface what I'm about to say by saying I think the New Apostolic Reformation has hijacked the seven mountain prophecy and taken it into a direction that was never intended. So with that being said, Lauren Cunningham, Francis Schaeffer, and Bill Bright, who are all pretty big people in evangelical circles, theologians in their own right, had each individually been given visions from God that they believed were ways to be more effective at reaching the world with the gospel. And one day they came together at a conference or something, and they were just chatting with each other, and so what's God been doing with you? What's he been showing you lately? And as they began to share with each other what they had individually been given, they realized, wait a minute, you've been given a portion that adds to what I'm saying, and what I'm saying complements what you're saying, and wow. And when the three of them brought what they believed that the Lord was telling each of them individually together, it formed into what became known as the seven mountain prophecy, which is essentially that they call them mountains, but we might think of them as spheres of influence, government, religion, family, media, arts and entertainment, religion, education. These are all things that have a massive impact on our culture. And the vision that they had was, well, if we as believers, with the gifts, talents, and abilities that we've each individually been given, you have talents and gifts and abilities I don't have, and I have some that you don't have, and whatnot. If we align ourselves with the mountain or the sphere of influence that aligns with our gifting, our internal giftings that Yahuwah has given to us, if we move with intent to occupy that mountain so that we have an influence on the culture, then we're going to be a lot more effective at reaching the world. And I think the New Apostolic Reformation takes that, I'm using the word reach, and they change the word reach to rule, because they essentially teach that we have to rule those seven mountains, and Yeshua's not going to come back until we do. I'm not on that page, but I do believe that there's something to the aspect of, hey, listen, we need to move with intent with whatever abilities, talents, gifts that we have been given. We need to move with intent to a position of influence so that we can actually impact this culture and reach the world with the gospel. And so that's the first time that I really saw the power. And if we can just be united, instead of divisive on everything, it's fine if we have disagreements, but we should be able to. I've always been a huge advocate of, hey, let's talk it out. I started Quest for Truth with Doug Hamp specifically based on the premise that we had disagreements. It was like, Doug and I debated at a conference, and he's like, I really enjoyed debating with you. Why don't we do a show? And it was like, we agree on the core essentials, but there's lots of other things we disagree on. So let's do it. I think if we can do more of that, then with the body fully united, then instead of people saying, the hand saying to the foot, I have no need of you, saying, hey, wait a minute, I'm a hand, you're a foot, we're part of a body. If we all stick together, this body could actually do something, So.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. I mean, I think more and more, the world is pushing divisiveness and it's pushing isolation for various reasons. And it's for a reason, because I think the enemy is starting to realize that as the fire gets turned up and people are forced into making bolder and bolder decisions for righteousness versus political correctness, right? Mm-hmm. That the more people are emboldened to walk according to God's word and to live according to his spirit, that when they start to come together, crazy greater than these type things will start to happen. Mm-hmm. And that's why right now pushed onto the world so much is this division and separation, because I think the enemy is kind of sweating in his boots, and he's like, oh man, well, time to turn the heat up and separate people, because if God's going to start doing those greater than these type works, and the mustard seed moves the mountains, that's what he doesn't want to happen. And the way that he'll do that is to teach us or convince us that we need to isolate ourselves away and not get together and have those type of moments where we share those revelations and we start bouncing off each other and have the iron sharpening the iron. Anyways, I've been kind of worked up about that just because we've been doing a lot of traveling recently, and I haven't really realized that significance, and you kind of forget whenever you're away from people for a long time. But oh man, am I being reminded, getting together and how rejuvenating and and that's why I think it's so good for us to to get together with other believers and encourage each other and have an open ear as well. Because if we come with our agendas, that's how you kind of really can slam the door in people's faces. But if you come with an open heart and saying, how can God speak to me through them? And perhaps that's when he can also use you in the way that you might want to be, able to, speak to them, Anyway, so that was my main focus of interest in this particular Torah portion regarding the lepers, and interesting, how one of the doves, they have the two turtle doves, one is killed and the other is dipped in the blood and then released to go into the open field. And I just found that really interesting it really made me think of the parallel between the scapegoats as well. You had Barabbas means son of the father, and you had Yeshua, and one was condemned to death and one was set free. And it's almost like there's these increasing microcosms of the overarching premise of the sacrifice of the lamb is kind of reflected in these microcosms and these various other sacrifices as well. So just very interesting stuff. And then my one comment about the half Torah portion we found here in Kings regarding it tells about the story of the men in Jerusalem that were being besieged, and they were hungry, and there was plague in the city, and they were like, well, you know what, let's go down to the Assyrian camp and see if we can get some food, because we're going to die here, and if we go in the city we're going to die, so let's just go and check it out. And they go down and they find that Yah had brought in all this noise and scared the pants off of all these Assyrians, almost quite literally, because when the spies, when the men and horses went out, they find all these garments littered along their way. And it's interesting that, things like that happen in the scripture. Sounds like a big miracle, but it's one that I think I've maybe only read over like once or twice. And the whole kind of the premise I got out of this half Torah portion is they bring back this good report, and they tell the captain of the guard that bread is going to be sold for such and such price, and the captain is like, "Nah, I don't believe it." and it was almost like he reaped the consequences of his faithlessness, because it says that he died in that city gate when all the people trampled over him, probably because they were all starving to death. And what lesson can we learn from that? And we constantly have these opportunities to put faith in God, and whenever we kind of shy away or like, oh, that's not possible, I think the blessing sometimes can turn into a curse because of our doubt or because of our hesitancy. What he wanted to be used for good, because we're like digging our claws into reality that we think is, it can kind of come back to bite us. And so anyways, that's what I have today, guys. Sorry I don't have my notes up. I just kind of had to run through things by memory. But yeah.
Yeah, okay. Good stuff. Thanks, Jake. Awesome. All right, Juan Carlos, what are your thoughts on anything Jake had to say and or this week's Torah portion, Prophets and New Testament?
Yeah, I think we are going to be sharing things very similar to what Jake was mentioning, but I will try to complement with some things that I was able to see in the portion today. But before starting, it's the first time that I heard about this 7-mountain concept. I didn't hear about this in the past. And I found it very interesting because, when you were discussing about this, just immediately something pop up in my mind is regarding the Levites. The Levites were separated. It was 3 houses of the Levites, and each one of the houses had a specific task to do in the tabernacle. So somehow resonated in my mind of what you were sharing about the 7 mountains. Yeah, we all of us have a different purpose in the kingdom of Yahuwah. So in the same way that the Levites were separated in order to do some specific activity on the service of Yahuwah, it makes total sense that if we have the chance to be together, everyone that has a specific purpose and the same purpose, we can do amazing things. So just to share with you guys that thought.
Yeah, I just I punched up while you're talking real quick. If you're not familiar with it, again, there's a group of people out there that I think have hijacked the concept, but I think the concept itself is legitimate. I think what some people are doing with it is not, but you could just punch up the 7 mountain prophecy and you'll see reclaiming the 7 mountains of culture. They have arts and entertainment, business, education, family, government, media, and religion. And, really, if you just think about each of those things, clearly those all have a massive impact on our society. Religion, obviously, media. I think, in my opinion, media, arts, and entertainment are the 2 most powerful mountains, because media, arts, and entertainment, those 2 mountains actually influence the other 5. So, which is why I'm so passionate, because the gifts, talents, and abilities that I have happen to line up with media, arts, and entertainment. And so, and what I found is when we move with intent to, and I'll use the word occupy, the mountain that aligns with the gifts, talents, and abilities that he has given to us. When we align ourselves with intent and say, you know what, I'm going to make a concerted effort to put all of my gifts, talents, and abilities on the table and use them for the advancement of the kingdom, that supernatural doors of favor open up for you. And the reason for that is because Yahuwah wants the world to know the message. And when he finds somebody who says, here am I, use me, I'm willing, thank you for the gifts, talents, and abilities you've given me. I want to occupy this mountain of influence and use it to reach the world. Well, now you're in line with him. He's like, awesome, I gave you those gifts, talents, and abilities for that reason. So, and what is when I was doing a teaching on this one time, actually I was teaching on the gifts of the Spirit, and the dominant 7 gifts of the Spirit, when I was teaching on them, my mentor and friend of mine, he said to me, hey Rob, you ever notice that the gifts of the Spirit, they line up with the 7 mountains? I was like, really? Mm-hmm. And so we sat down together and we looked at it and we're like, yeah, sure enough. Teachers, well, that lines up with education, right? And when we looked at the spiritual gift of mercy, we found that it aligned with family. And I was teaching on this, and I was saying, imagine how happy and fulfilled you would be if you aligned your gifts with the mountain of influence, right? And, you know, how fulfilling would that be, right? And this one woman raised her hand. She goes, I don't get it. You know, my job, she's a florist. And she's like, I don't, she identified, we took a spiritual gift test, and she identified as mercy. And she's like, I don't see how my gift of mercy aligns with the mountain of family and my job. And I said, well, what do you make flowers for? She goes, well, I make flowers for like weddings and birthdays. And then she goes, oh. I'm like, boom, that's why you're walking in all of your gifting. You're the things that she does as a florist automatically line up with family. You know, she was thinking family, well, I got to be a stay-at-home mom or something. That's what my job's got to be. I'm like, no. You know, what she does for a career path as a florist lines up with the mountain of family and her gift of mercy. You know, so, I mean, it's a powerful thing. I don't want to take up the whole show talking about that right there, but, you know, you can just look it up and you'll find it's a fascinating study. It really is.
Yeah, and the gift of the Spirit working in this case, Rob, as boosting the abilities we each one of us can have. Mm-hmm. That's an amazing connection. And actually, you know, I was watching a video from a guy that's always talking about the soft skills, hard skills. That is quite used to hear it on the secular world. And it was amazing. I was even thinking to put a video on this, because everything that he was talking about, the soft skills, he called it human skills. And everything that he described as the human skills was completely related to the fruit of the Spirit. So what the world is seeing as human skills of soft skills is what we are able to develop as part of the Ruach HaKodesh in us. So it's amazing that the world even is talking about this kind of things, that they don't realize that the source of everything is Yahuwah Elohim. So, you know, just to share about my thoughts in this portion, and you know, Wayikra Leviticus sometimes is difficult, and especially this chapter, because we are talking about secretions, emissions, discharges, and uncleanness, and so on. And when every time that we read this kind of things, it's difficult to understand what's the bottom line, what Yahuwah wants to tell us. And, you know, as Jake said, most probably we are not going to be able to understand everything in this era, in this age. But in the age of Mashiach, when he's coming back, we are going to be able to see clearly everything, the intention, the real intention of all of these laws. But, you know, this morning I was sharing with my kids about the parable of the sower. And we were discussing about the good soil and what it means to be the good souls and so on. And when we were discussing this, one specific passage came to my mind, because I read also the portion before talking to my kids. And I want to start over with my comments sharing this passage. And somehow it's going to make sense of why we have all these laws and sometimes that we don't understand, but there is a specific reason for that. And the passage is in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 4, verse 5 to 9. And you know, without even thinking on this, when I thought in this passage, it made a direct connection with the parable of the sower. So it was interesting what happened this morning. So it says the following. This is Yahuwah speaking through Moshe to the people, to Israel. And it says, "See, I have taught you laws and right rulings, as Yahuwah my Elohim commanded me." This is Moshe actually speaking to the people. "As Yahuwah my Elohim commanded me to do thus in the land which you go to possess. And you shall guard and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding before the eyes of the peoples, who hear all these laws, and they shall say, only a wise and understanding people is this great nation. Or what great nation is there which has Elohim so near to it, as Yahuwah our Elohim is to us, whenever we call on him? And what great nation is there that has such laws and righteous right rulings, like all this Torah, which I set before you this day? Only guard yourself and guard your life diligently, lest you forget the words your eyes have seen, lest they turn aside from your heart all the days of your life, and you should make them known to your children and your grandchildren. So what's my point here? And just to do the connection with the parable of the sower. So where we see in the verse 9 that we need to guard ourselves diligently, not to forget these words, is to put the words in practice. It's exactly what Yahushua said about the being a good soil. But what's the point and what's the connection with this portion? Even when we don't understand sometimes some of the laws and the right rulings that we see in Torah, we need to remind ourselves always what is written here. That Yahuwah gave us his Torah as a father to his children in order to make us wise. And even in that situation, the people of the nations of the world, they will see that we are keeping some strange laws and strange lifestyles. But we need to understand that these strange lifestyles, that this is strange for the world, is something that is going to make us wise, and it's going to make us kodesh, it's going to make us set apart. So even in this portion, if we don't understand clearly what is everything related to, we need to keep in mind that this is coming from Yahuwah, and this is the intention, to make us wise, to make us special. So, and one thing in addition that, I was thinking, and it's important to apply maybe to this portion, and I will share with you what are my thoughts on this, is what Shaul said in the book of Romans, chapter 7, verse 14. He says the following: "For we know that the Torah is spiritual, but I am fleshly, sold under sin." So, with the words of Shaul, we can understand that everything that we read in Torah has a spiritual implication. It has a spiritual meaning. Also, it has a physical interpretation, physical meaning, hygiene, and a lot of things that is important to handle any kind of infection. And we were discussing all this last week. But also, the most important thing is that there is an additional level. That level is a spiritual meaning that we need to try to seek and find what's that's meaning in every portion of Torah, in every portion of the word of Yahuwah. So, last week we were discussing about becoming tamei in Hebrew, that is basically to become unclean. And I was sharing with you what I understood about become tamei is more than the physical impurity. It's basically to be in a state that we are disconnected, that we are not in the same frequency or the symphony as of Yahuwah. So we are in a status of tamei, not in the same symphony, and we need to be synced up again to the same frequency of Yahuwah in order to partake with him in the set apart things, in the kodesh things. So when I started to read, this passage, I see two situations here. That a house becoming leprous, or even a situation of discharge of a woman or a man that is putting him in a tamei state. So first I started to think how a house can become leprous, because when we start to talk about the leprosy, the science today says that leprosy is not contagious. At least it needs to pass several years, several decades in order to people to get infected with leprosy. So when I was reading in details, it's my belief, currently is my take, is that the word of Yahweh is not talking specifically about leprosy. It's talking about a more broader aspect of a sickness that somehow is putting the body in a situation that is not working, not function as it was intended to work, as Yahuwah created the body. And why I'm basing this, and I will share some passages with you. So if we go to the chapter 14 of Leviticus, verse 54, and this is the end of the chapter 14. It says the following: "This is the Torah for any infection of leprosy and eruption, and for leprosy of a garment, and of a house, and for a swelling, or for a scab, and for a bright spot, to teach when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the Torah of leprosy." So in this portion, Yahuwah through Moshe is saying that this instruction in this chapter is something that we translated as leprosy, but it has several things: leprosy in a garment, leprosy in a house, swelling, scab, so things that is in the body. And you know what? One parallel things that for me resonated when I was reading this passage is that when we talk about our skin, our body, is basically is what is outside, is the model, the template for our real being. A house is something similar. You know, a house is what is covering a family. And you know, when we're talking about the garments, is something that we're using in order to cover our body as well. So it's something that is covering something else, in this case, the body, the being, and so on. So when I talk about leprosy, and I think that's what I'm trying to understand now, and I would like to hear your thoughts, guys, is that maybe more than leprosy is talking about any kind of sickness or any kind of illness that is removing us from a well-functioned body. And in this case, how this applies to the house, anything that's not working properly in the house, that's making the house tamei. The house is not at the same symphony and the same frequency that Yahuwah is intending for the house. So, and the same thing we find it in the chapter 15. When we read the chapter 15, it's talking about discharges by men or flows, emissions by women. But what I was able to see here is that there are two types of emissions. One, describing in the chapter 15, in the entire preliminary verses, that something that is not working properly in the body and is causing an emission. And also, in the case of a woman, at the end of the chapter 15, is that the monthly period is going beyond the usual period. So it's because something is not working fine. And the interesting thing is that in the two situations, and even in the situation of the leper, they needed to bring a sin offering. But we find in the chapter 15 that there is specific situations like an emission of men, and also the monthly period of a woman that doesn't require to bring a sin offering. So I see a difference between something that the body was created to work in some way that didn't require a sin offering, but other situations that the body started to malfunction, to say somehow, that required a sin offering. So what's the difference? And I tried to understand a little bit and started to dig in. And again, I don't want to say that this is the answer, but I will share with you what are my thoughts and based on what I was able to find. So, and always let's keep in mind that the tamei, more than physical impurity, I think the most important thing is that it's something that is making us not to be in the same symphony and frequency with Yahuwah Elohim. So, how the body can get sick? How a body, in this case, can get to a status of sickness or illness? What is causing sickness? And I want to be very careful on what I'm going to share now, because we need to see, and there are three conditions that we see in the words of Yahushua about sickness. And let's go to the book of John, chapter 9, and I will do the connection to what Jake said a moment ago. We see here, basically, we're going to read from verse 1 to verse 3 of John Yahuchanan in Hebrew. It says, "And passing by, he saw," he's talking about Yahushua saw a man blind from birth. And his taught ones asked him, saying, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he should be born blind?" And Yahushua answered, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of Elohim might be made manifest in him." So when I read this passage, I see three sources or three reasons to become sick. Okay? One is because of a person committing sin. It could end up in sickness. Second is something that is coming from family. You know, we know that Yahuwah is punishing, is written in Torah, until the third and fourth generation. So it could be something that is being tied up from family past. But also there is a third situation, is that is Yahuwah Elohim doing something because he has a greater purpose? And that's the reason maybe of a sickness, because he wants to show his power to the world. So, and when we find some situations here, it's something that could be in common on these three reasons of becoming sick. There's only one thing that is common, and it's the work of the unclean spirits, demons, or the work of Satan. And let me tell something about the work of Elohim. We find two cases in the scripture that it's clear to see what Yahuwah is not related to the sin of people or the sin of the family, but it's Yahuwah trying to do something. And the first and the most important example we see in the life of Job. Job didn't commit sin, but Yahuwah, what he decided to remove a shield around the Job. And who was the responsible to go and try to destroy Job was Satan. For sure, Yahuwah, what he said, you can touch his body, you can touch everything, it belongs to him, but not his life. And we see a similar situation with Peter. You know, when Yahushua said to Peter, Peter, I will pray for you because Satan has asked you in order to tempt and try you. So we see exactly the same situation. And Satan and evil spirits and clean spirits somehow working in this situation. So what's the connection that I want to say? When we see in this portion, the body discharging something that is related, that the body is not working properly, and it could be related to an illness, is connected directly, potentially, to sin. And if it's not related to sin, it could be because Yahuwah has a greater purpose in our lives. Okay? And why this is so important, and we see a connection in the same passage, in the same portion. If we go to chapter 14, this is when Yahuwah is talking about the plague in the house. In the chapter 14, verse 33 to 34, it says the following: And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, When you come into the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as a possession, and I put a plague of leprosy in a house in the land of your possession. So who is sending the plague of leprosy to a house? It's Yahuwah. And we know that Yahuwah is sending plagues when people commit sin, or maybe because he has a greater purpose, exactly as we see in the passage of John that I was sharing a moment ago. Why I'm saying all of this? If Tamei, we understand Tamei to be not in the frequency of Yahuwah, what can take us from the frequency of Yahuwah is committing sin. And when we commit sin, we open the doors for evil spirits. Yeah, and even if Yahuwah is having a great purpose and we are becoming sick because not because of sin, because Yahuwah is doing something marvelous in our life, He is removing the shield around us in the same way that He did it with Job. And basically, evil spirits or the Satan can go and try to destroy everything that is around us, but with the purpose of Yahuwah doing greater things, as in the case of Job. So when we think on this way, that's my take so far, trying to understand in more deeply the portion, is that we become Tamei because there are something, evil spirits and clean spirits somehow is not giving us the chance to be in the symphony of Yahuwah. Maybe because we did something wrong, or because Yahuwah is trying to teach us some lesson in order to polish us, in order to become better children of Yahuwah. So why this is so important in the way that I see it? Because we discussed last week, when we become Tamei, we are being removed from the presence of Yahuwah. We cannot be in the presence of Yahuwah. And actually, this is really important, because the whole instruction we see here is ending with the real purpose of this laws, and this we find it in the chapter 15 of Vayikra, verse 31. Just to understand the main purpose and why Yahuwah is asking all of this. It says, "Thus you shall separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness when they defile my dwelling place, which is in their midst. So all this tamei and tahor thing, unclean situation and laws, is in order to be able to partake in the dwelling place of Yahuwah. Okay? So we are being removed. We see the leper being removed. We see that a person that have these emissions is unclean until certain period of time. So is not able to partake with Yahuwah in the set apart things. So what we need to do is we need to become tahor. We need to become clean again in order to be accepted in the kingdom of Yahuwah. And interesting enough, and Jake mentioned this as well, we see a process, and when I was checking in the chapter 14, I found a few things very interesting. The first thing that they needed to do is, to bring these two birds when in order to be declared clean. And again, as I said last week, we see in this whole process, one key figure is the figure of the Kohen Hagadol, the high priest. High priest was the one declaring the person clean, declaring the house clean. So he was a key figure in the same way that we see Yahushua HaMashiach, our Kohen Hagadol, our high priest, being the key figure in the process of our cleansing. Okay? So the first aspect we see here is this person, the leper, needed to bring two birds. And as Jake said, I saw also the parallel with the Yom HaKippurim offering. And when two goats needed to be brought to the Kohen Hagadol, and one was a sin offering, and the other one was let loose to the wilderness, to Azazel. In this case, we see exactly the same thing. We see one bird being slaughtered as a sin offering, and we see the other bird also let loose to the open field. So if we remember what was the purpose, and that's the parallel of the spiritual implication that I see in this situation. What is the purpose of the Yom HaKippurim? What is the purpose of the two male goats? The purpose of those two male goats, and actually I think next week we are going to talk about that, is for the cleansing of the people. Was the bull offering is for the cleansing of the high priest, and the two goats is for the cleansing of the people. So what I see here in the parallel is a person that needs to be accepted again in the kingdom of Yahuwah. In order to enter into the kingdom of Yahuwah, he needs to go through a process of cleansing. It's the cleansing of the people. More than the person is the cleansing of the people in order to be accepted. And that's why I see this parallel with the offering of Yom HaKippurim. The second thing, that is the second process that he's talking about, is he needed to go through a similar process of the ordination of the Kohanim that also Jacob brought to the table a minute ago. This whole thing about the sprinkling the oil, the blood, is quite similar. I want us to share these parallels. So if we go to the chapter 14, verse 15 to 18, it says, "And the priest shall take some of the log of oil and pour it into the palm of his own left hand. And the priest shall dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left hand, and shall sprinkle some of the oil with his finger 7 times before Yahuwah. And of the rest of the oil in his hand, the priest puts some on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the blood of the guilt offering. And the rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand, he puts on the head of him who is to be cleansed. And the priest shall make atonement for him before Yahuwah." So we see here is the process of declaring clean the leper with this old interaction with the oil. But what for me was very interesting is to see that he also was putting the oil on the head of the person. And we see the same process happening with the Kohanim. If we go to the chapter 8 of Leviticus, verse 10 to 12. And it says the following: "And Moshe took the anointing oil and anointed the dwelling place and all that was in it, and set them apart, and he sprinkled some of it on the slaughter place 7 times, and anointed the slaughter place and all its utensils, and the basin and its base, to set them apart. And he poured some of the anointing oil on Aaron's head and anointed him to set him apart. So we see the parallel of the ordination of the Kohanim with the cleansing process of the leper with the oil. And what was the whole purpose of the process of the Kohanim is in order to make them Kodesh, is Kodeshah, set apartness. And we see the same thing on the leper. So I'm wondering, and this is what I'm understanding so far, that maybe the process, the second step of the leper, is in order to help them to become Kodesh again, become set apart. In the same way was the purpose of the Kohanim. And it is written, in the Torah, and also Peter said this. And I want to read it to you. Let's go, Rob, please, to the 1 Peter, chapter 1. Verse 13 to 16. It says, "Therefore, having girded up the loins of your mind, being sober, set your expectation perfectly upon the favor that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Yahushua HaMashiach, as obedient children, not conforming yourselves to the former lusts in your ignorance. Instead, as the one who called you is set apart, is Kadosh, so you also should become Kadosh, set apart in all behavior, because it has been written, be set apart, be Kadosh, for I am Kadosh, I am set apart." And this is a quote from Leviticus, Vayikra, chapter 11, verse 44. So we see the whole process of the ordination of the Kohanim in order for them to become set apart, Kadosh. And we see the same second step of the leper in order to be readmitted in the kingdom, that they needed to become Kodesh. So the process, in the way that I see it, is part of the process of becoming Kodesh. And let's keep in mind the process that we are living through Yahushua and his offering. Because the third step that I see here, and it's something that I never saw before, just saw it this morning here at home, and it's what is written in the chapter 14, verse 9. It says, "And on the 7th day," because 7 days needed to pass by, and it says, "And on the 7th day, it shall be that he shaves all the hair off his head, and his beard, and his eyebrows, even all his hair he shaves off, and he shall wash his garments, and wash his body in water, and shall be clean." So, I don't have the understanding of what is the relation here of the hair. What I think is somehow, and it's just a thought, that here, in the words of Shaul, Paul, and also we see a similar situation in Torah, is related to the authority. When a woman shaves her head, is because of somehow related to the authority of the man, and the authority of Yahushua, and on the authority of Yahuwah. So I think here is related somehow to the authority. But what I saw this morning, is funny and interesting at the same time, because if we imagine ourselves taking the eyebrows, taking our hair, taking all hair of our body, we are going to look like very similar to a baby. So the whole process here, just let's imagine a baby, just a newborn baby. How they look like is basically, the eyebrows is barely seen, very little hair on the head, or even sometimes no hair at all, and in the hair on the body is not existent mostly. So what I see here is a parallel of a new being born again. So the process of the leper, in order to enter in the kingdom of Yahuwah again, they needed to be born again, and that's why the second step here is that they needed to wash their garments and also to wash their entire body. In the same way that, a newborn baby is in the liquid in the womb, is basically the process of being born again on water. We see exactly the same thing, the parallel on this person. So parallel of being cleansed in the same way that the cleansing of the people of Yom HaKippurim, the parallel of the ordination of the Kohanim in order to be Kodesh again, and the parallel of being born again in order to become a new creature, in order to start all over again in the kingdom of Yahuwah. So, and something that also for me was resonating, because we know that Yahushua is the one giving us the chance to be accepted in the kingdom again, to be accepted, and we know what's the process, that we need to remove our sin through the offering of Yahushua. Our all sins, past sins, are being forgiven, but we need to be born again. We need to go and we need to be Kodesh, as we see in the Torah and also in the words of Peter. And this is through Yahushua HaMashiach. But through Yahushua HaMashiach offerings, we also see a parallel to what is written in this portion, in the last part of the chapter 14. And it's related to the house with the infection, okay? And again, let's think on what I was sharing at the beginning about the connection with sin, or the potential connection with a clean spirit that we need to remove in order to be synchronized with the frequency of Yahuwah. So what we see about the stones, and this is really important, and I want to refer only to the chapter 14, verse 39 and 42. So the house was shut up by the priest, the Kohen HaGadol, when they found the infection. And this is the process described at the next step. So it says in the verse 39, and the priest shall come again on the seventh day and look and see. If the plague has spread on the walls of the house, then the priest shall command, and they shall remove the stones with the plague in them, and they shall throw them outside the city into an unclean place, while he lets the house be scrubbed inside all around, and the dust that they scrape off they shall pour out in an unclean place outside the city, and they shall take other stones and put them in the place of those stones, and take other mortar and plaster the house. So basically the first step is to remove the stones that are being infected and put another stones in replacement. And also we continue reading, even if this workaround didn't work, and the house continue being infected, the whole house needs to be demolished. So what's the parallel, to what I see in three levels: in a personal level, in a house or family or household level, and also the level of the assembly. If we go to the chapter 5 of Matthew Yahu in Hebrew, verse 30, there are other verses that Yahushua was speaking about the similar concepts, but let's read just the verse 30. It says the following: and if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away from you. For it is better for you that one of your members perish than for your entire body to be thrown into a Gehenna. So this body is our house, okay? Somehow it's the house for our inner being, our real being. So what Yahushua is saying is that we don't need to cut physically the hand. Is that everything that we do with our hands that is causing us to stumble, fall away from the way of Yahuwah, we need to remove from our lives. And if we think in this in parallel to what we're reading in this portion, the house, we need to remove some stones that are infected, and we need to be clean again. And who's doing that for us is Yahushua HaMashiach. So at the personal level, we see a situation here, and also it's connected to sin. Okay, so if we think on the house at the household level, it's the same thing. And just let's think on the and I think Diego, you were mentioned this last week, what is written in 1 Corinthians, and the sin of the assembly. Okay, sin of the assembly needs to be removed because it's going to be puffed up in the same way that leaven is doing it. So if we go to the family level, also is something that we need to take care of, and especially for us men, being responsible of the household, is our duty in order to guide our families in the way of Yahuwah. And I know this is not an easy task. I can tell you in my own experience, it's not an easy task at all. But if we see the situation, also is our duty at the house level that we need to remove the infection in order to be working at the same level and the same frequency of Yahuwah. But what about assembly? One example we see in what I just said about 1 Corinthians, but there is an amazing parallel, and the first one is in the book of Ephesians, chapter 2. Verse 19 to 22. And the whole chapter 2 is amazing because, it's somehow connected to everything that I have been sharing today, is that, we were far off, we were out of the camp, out of the tabernacle of Yahuwah, and now we are able to get in again as part of the offering of Yahushua HaMashiach. But if we focus in the chapter 19 to 22, it says the following. So then, you are not longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens of the set-apart ones, and members of the household of Elohim, having been built upon the foundations of the missionaries and prophets, Yahushua HaMashiach himself being the chief cornerstone. So we see this, and let's think on the parallel to the portion. We see stones being removed from a house. In this case, we see Yahushua being the chief cornerstone, and we know this cornerstone is unmovable. It's not going to be removed. And this is one of the hopes we have. But if we continue reading, it says, in whom all the building, being joined together, grows into a set-apart dwelling place in Yahuwah, in whom you also are being built together into a dwelling of Elohim in the Spirit. So what Paul and Shaul is talking about is that through Yahushua being the chief cornerstone, we are part of the same building. We, the assembly, are part of the dwelling place of Yahuwah. We are part of those stones that, putting all together on top of the chief cornerstone, we are being the dwelling place of Yahuwah through the spirits. And who is talking about exactly the same is Peter. We go to 1 Peter, chapter 2, verse 4 to 8. It says, drawing near to him, to who? To Yahushua, a living stone, rejected indeed by men, but chosen by Elohim and precious. You also, as living stones, are being built up a spiritual house, a set-apart priesthood, to offer up spiritual slaughter offerings acceptable to Elohim through Yahushua HaMashiach, because it is contained in the scripture, see, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, chosen, precious, and he who believes on him shall by no means be put to shame. This preciousness, then, is for you who believe, but to those who are disobedient, the stone which the builder rejected has become the chief cornerstone, and a stone of stumbling and a rock that makes for falling, who stumble because they are disobedient to the word, to which they also were appointed. So we are being compared by Paul and also by Peter as living stones of the dwelling place of Yahuwah. So if we, living stone, are become infected somehow, and we know how we can become infected in the same way that we see in this portion, through sin, and let's focus just in what we can do in order to become infected. Is because we are committing sin. We're going to keep aside the wonderful works of Yahuwah that maybe He's leading us through trials in order to for us to become a better person. So we can commit sin, and this could be the situation that is infecting us spiritually, physically as well, but spiritually infecting us in order to remove us from the presence of Yahuwah. So and what's going to happen? What happened in this portion? That those stones were removed, and new stones were put in that house. And this is resonated to me what is written in Revelation, that we can lose our crown, and that crown can be given to somebody else in the same way that the first king of Israel, Saul, he was removed from the kingship because he didn't follow the way of Yahuwah. He was disobedient. And for that reason, the crown was removed from his head and was given to David. So I see the same parallel here. We are living stones through the offering of Yahushua, the living stone of the dwelling place of Yahuwah, that we can be removed and be replaced from somebody else if we are disobedient, in the same way that it's written here in the letter of Peter. So again, the bottom line, what I see here is that all this instruction, as I said at the beginning, is the instruction of Yahuwah to make us a special people, a nation of priests and kings, and a special people that He selected in order to bring the light of the world to the world, in order to transform the world to the original design of the creation. So that's why what he's expecting us with all this instruction is for us to be set apart, for us to be Kodesh in the same way that he is Kodesh. And looking into the parallels and looking into the spiritual aspects, we see these amazing connections that I have been sharing with you all. The last thing that I wanted to share, and this is something that my father received many years ago. Back then, he had a specific interpretation when he was at church, myself as well, that, when I was thinking on this some time ago, I came to a renewed interpretation now that we are following Torah for several years already. So what is it about? We see in the chapter 15 a woman on their monthly period that is going beyond the normal situation. And we see an amazing parallel in the book of Mark and also in Matthew and Luke about the woman with the flow of blood. That she has this problem for 12 years, okay? And we know the whole story about this, how she was healed by touching the tzitzit of Yahushua, and she received the healing that she was looking for. But how we can understand even more than that, just thinking on this portion, that she was somehow in an unclean status. She was not able to participate on the clean things, and also in the kingdom of Yahuwah, she was tamei, because her period and her blood was flowing for 12 years. And she received the cleansing through Yahushua HaMashiach. It's an amazing other parallel to the cleansing that we need. But what's the interpretation that my dad received back then? That woman represented Israel. And in Israel, what he thought back then is that they were doing sacrifices during the entire lifetime of Israel. Somehow was representing the blood of that woman. And those sacrifices somehow stopped through one person, Yahushua HaMashiach. And it's not only that, because after that, when we continue reading the book of Mark and also Matthew, the whole story, what happened next? Yahushua is being brought to the house of a person when her daughter, her child of 12 years, had died. And Yahushua was resurrecting this child. When everybody was thinking that she was dead, he was resurrecting her. So what my dad back then understood that that child somehow was the next step of the church. Church being born in this case in the way of in the like of this child, and the 12 years of this child represented the 12 apostles that basically started the church. That was the interpretation of my father back then, but was my renewed interpretation. And I was sharing with you last week a few verses of Jerusalem being with her hands full of blood, and that Jerusalem was going to be judged according to those shedding blood. Okay, so what I see is that that woman, that situation of in the Brit Hadashah in the New Testament, is representing Jerusalem, that she has her hands full of blood. And through Yahushua HaMashiach, Jerusalem, and through Jerusalem, the entire Israel is going to be cleansed. And what is representing this young lady of 12 years is basically Jerusalem. Through that, Israel as a whole being born again. And the 12 years represent, in this case of the 12 years of the woman, represent the 12 tribes of Israel. The 12 years of this young lady also represent the same. So basically, it's the process of being born again in the same way that we see the process in this portion, that we need to become from a tamei status to a tahor status in order to partake and being received again by Yahuwah Elohim. So once again, and that was my last point that I wanted to share, when we started looking on the understanding the spiritual meaning of these things, and I do believe that there's more and more spiritual meaning, profound spiritual meanings on all of these things. We understand that, the whole purpose of Torah, as Shaul said, the Torah is spiritual. The whole purpose of all these laws and right rules is in order to make us special, in order to make us Kodesh, in order to be set apart, in order to fulfill the purpose of Israel in this world. And the purpose of Israel in this world is what Yahuwah is leading us through the hand of Yahushua HaMashiach in order to bring the light of Yahuwah, that is Yahushua HaMashiach, to this world. So, guys, this is what I have to share. I don't know. I would like to hear your comments as well on this, and these points would be really interesting.
Yeah, I wrote some notes down while you were talking. In this week's portion on the study page, let me switch over here. There's a reference to the book A More Excellent Way, Be in Health, Spiritual Roots of Disease, Pathways to Wholeness by Henry W. Wright. I have that book. I appreciate that book. I appreciate the concepts in the book. I think a lot of the stuff in there is valid. My reservation in it, though, is I found that a lot of people who get zealous about this book will start judging the victim instead of loving the victim. It's like, this person needs healing. You're not there to, speculate what's their sin, and I agree with you that in the passage that you were looking at, the different causes of illness, you had, when the person themselves commits sin, that can lead to an illness. Perhaps there may be family curses. We know that the sins of the fathers are passed down to the third and fourth generations, so sometimes we have to break generational curses in order to break off sickness. And then there's a situation that God might be glorified, like this person, he was blind from birth, but God had a reason for that, because there would be a time when Yeshua would show up and heal him, and that's one of the signs that proved that he was the Messiah, that the Messiah could heal somebody blind from birth. So, yes, those are three valid reasons for illnesses that we certainly see in Scripture. I have found in my own journey, and this is not thus saith the Lord, this is thus thinketh Rob, as I look at things like what we just looked at there and what you talked about and what that book refers to as far as spiritual roots of sickness. But I've found that there are at least three other ones that are outside of that, and that would be toxins. When they're spraying our sky every day full of chemtrails, and Monsanto's changing our food and jacking up everything so that we're not eating what Yahuwah originally created, or when we eat junk food all the time, or if you're like, in my case, I was a helicopter mechanic for 8 years in the military. Now, I was one of those guys that basically dressed up like an astronaut all the time. I was wearing like a painter's suit and would have latex rubber gloves on and often wore a respirator when I was working with things like synthetic oils and greases and fuel and things like that. But I knew other guys, they would spend all day walking around full of grease and hydraulic oil and all these synthetic oils and stuff. They'd have it all over their hands and in their fingernails and everywhere and all day long. And I'm like, man, your skin's the biggest organ, and you absorb these toxins. So if you're immersing yourself in toxins, chemicals and stuff all day long, well, you're going to get sick. It's eventually going to lead to cancers and stuff like that. And exposure to contagions, if you happen to be working with diseases or something and it gets out, like something that may have happened in Wuhan in 2019, genetic engineering and things like that. And of course, injury. If you get an injury, it can turn to gangrene, and it can have all kinds of other problems. So not every illness, with all due respect to Henry Wright, I don't think that all illness is due to sin. I think that there are plenty of external factors over and above the three that you mentioned, and I just list toxins, injury, and exposure to contagions, that also can cause you to be sick. So it's not our job to judge people. It's our job to love people and to reach out. And I believe in the gift of healing. I believe that it is a legitimate spiritual gift still in operation today. It requires one thing: faith. Somebody has to have faith, whether it's the person administering saying, hey, listen, be healed, or like Peter, hey, look, silver and gold I don't have, but what I do have, get up and walk. Boom, his faith, boom, person got healed. Or the woman with the issue of blood, it was her faith. Yeshua, nobody walked in more faith than Yeshua, right? I mean, he was the ultimate faith walker, and yet even he couldn't heal people in his hometown. Why? Because of their unbelief. The people didn't have belief. So because doubt is the kryptonite to faith. You can have all the faith in the world, but if the other person's full of doubt, you're not going to see healing. And so, I think when people try to walk in the gift of healing, as I've certainly tried to walk, and I know in myself when doubt comes in. If I act immediately, if I don't have time to think about it, and if the Holy Spirit says to me, heal that person, and I've heard that voice several times when I was around somebody that was in need of healing, and the Holy Spirit said, clear as day, heal that person. But I know myself that if I get in the way and start thinking, well, okay, Father, I'll do it, but what if it doesn't work? As soon as I go into the what if it doesn't work mode, I have moved out of faith and into doubt, and I'm now not operating in faith. The few times that I have acted immediately and didn't have time to think, I have seen physical healing manifestations take place, through my hands, not because of me, but because of what the Word says, and we are here by His stripes we're healed. Operating in that faith, the Holy Spirit moves and the person gets healed. But somebody has to have faith, and I think that some people who try to walk in the gift of healing, when they don't see, and they claim to have the faith, when they don't see the person get healed, they automatically assume that the person's in sin. And that's my only danger, my only reservation, I would say, to this book. I've met a lot of people who get overzealous about this book, and they start thinking everything has to do with sin. And I maintain, yes, sin can be a root of sickness and disease, but it's not the only root of sickness and disease, especially in this day and age when, humans are the only creature on earth that actually literally poisons its own air, food, and water. Like, we regularly poison our own air, food, and water, and then go and think that Twinkies are good for us and eat garbage. So, and that's the other problem on the healing side of thing is, listen, if you've got some kind of sickness or disease and you're praying for healing, and then somebody comes and tries to administer healing to you, you gotta stop the stuff that may have led to it. Like if you're eating junk food all day, it's not going to do me any good to try to lay hands on you for healing, because you're not addressing the root cause of what can be jacking your body up. If you're sitting there chain smoking all day, if you're vaping, I think vaping is just as bad as smoking, frankly. People argue with me on this all day long, but I maintain there's good research that says that vaping is just as bad as smoking. So if you're vaping all day, you're smoking all day, and you're drinking alcohol, and you're doing drugs or whatever, don't be surprised if your body starts falling apart. And and it's not going to do me any good to pray for you, because you're not making the necessary changes to stop what may be causing your body to fall apart. You know what I'm saying? So those are just some of the thoughts I had when you were talking about it. And this whole issue of leprosy, I think that there is a legitimate disease identified as leprosy, but I think, as you guys are pointing out, how does a house get leprosy, right? That we're using the word leprosy, but I think that the word has a broader meaning than just the clinical definition that the science has assigned to a disease there. And in the issue of Job, you mentioned Job really quick, or one of you guys did. There was a show that Zen Garcia and I did a few weeks ago. If people are interested, it was on April 1st. It was Secrets Revealed, episode 37, Quest for Truth, our study of Genesis 34, 33, Jubilees 30, and more. And in the show notes there, I've got a link to a text called The Testament of Job, which I had never heard of. The Testament of Job. And Zen started reading from it, and man, it was like a come to Jesus moment for me at this when we were doing the show, because Job has always been one of those books that tweaked me out, frankly. I was just like, you know what, God, don't recommend me to Satan, please. Like, it was one of those issues I had with God. Like, I had this block in my own prayer life with God, because there are times in my life where I thought that God just plays roulette with people, and hey, Michael, Gabriel, come over here, I'm going to jack with this guy, watch this, let's get some popcorn. Watch what we do to Job. You know what I mean? Like, if you just read the book of Job, it really doesn't put God in a really good light. Job's serving the Lord, he's doing his thing, and God's like, hey, Satan, you want to mess with my bro? Go for it, have fun. He redeems and restores Job afterwards, but he still lost his family. He still had to go through what he went through. And I never liked the book of Job. People want to turn to Job for comfort. It never gave comfort to me. And when I read the testament of Job, it puts the story in a whole other light. It's like when he brings up the Targums and stuff, or when we look at the book of Joshua and we get elaboration on the story. Now you understand. Oh, well, that's why Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of beans, and he came in from a day of hunting. Well, he just killed Nimrod. Of course he was hungry. Before that, it's like, why does a skillful hunter come in from a day of hunting and sell his birthright for a bowl of beans? Like, the story makes no sense in Genesis until you read the expanded story in Joshua. You're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Well, in this testament of Job, it's sort of like Abraham's story, where Abraham, again, in Genesis, we don't understand why Abraham's called out of Ur of the Chaldees. Why did God choose Abraham? Well, in Joshua, you see this guy who's crying out, like, who is God? Like, who is the creator of everything? My dad is like the chief idol maker for Nimrod, but I know he made those idols with his own hands, And when he starts to test this out after spending time in the house of Shem, he's like, okay, Mom, can you cook up some meals? I want to lay down some meal offerings to the gods. And so he lays out all these meal offerings in front of the gods that his dad creates in the courtyard, and of course they don't eat anything. So he's like, he's not the creator. So he takes a hatchet and he smashes up all the gods, and then he puts the axe like in the hand of the biggest god. And his father hears the commotion. He's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And he's like, Abraham's like, "I didn't do it. He did it." And he points to the idol that has the axe in his hand. And his father's like, "What are you talking about? He can't do that. He's made out of wood or whatever." And Abraham's like, "Yeah, hello, McFly. Why are you worshiping him then? You know he's made out of wood and stone. Why are you worshiping this thing?" And you always like, I can work with this guy, So it's the heart that Abraham had that caused God to say, yeah, I like this guy. I can work with him. Well, Job, who was he's like a grandson of Esau, had the same attitude. He had the same attitude, and he realized that there were these gods and he's questioning. He's like, I don't think these are the real deal. And when he became convinced that these gods aren't the real deal, he was a king. It was causing the people of the land to go astray. And he's like, if there is a real God, I don't want them going astray. And so he kind of cries out. He's like, what should I do? And he has this conversation with God, and God's like, he does the same kind of thing that Christ did with Ananias and Paul. When Paul was blinded, God calls Ananias to go heal his blindness and remove the scales from his eyes. And he says, you need to prophesy and tell Paul, listen, I've called you, but if you serve me, here's what you're going to go through, bro. You're going to go through some tremendous persecution. Well, Paul was the type of guy who was so zealous that he said, you know what? He counted the cost. He found it worthy. He's like, I'm going to do it. And sure enough, everywhere he went, he's getting beat up. And you get to, was it 1st or 2nd Corinthians, where he's like, you want to know what I've been through? I've been shipwrecked. I've been beaten. I've been stoned to death. I've been whipped. He goes through this long list. Next chapter, he says, I prayed 3 times for this thorn in the flesh, which is a Hebrew idiom for persecution. He prayed for persecution to be removed from him. And Yeshua says, you know what? My grace, my empowering presence to enable you to be who you're called to be and do what you're called to do is sufficient for you. I know it stinks. You're getting beat up everywhere you go, but bro, I got you. And so Paul knew in advance before starting his ministry what he was in for. It's the same thing with Job. When you read the testament of Job, God says, okay, his heart was to destroy all these idols. He says, but if you do that, Satan's going to come after you. He's really going to do a job on you because you're disrupting his gig, if you tear down all these idols. And so it's the same type of story with Ananias and Paul. Job's like, you know what? It's worth it. I'm going to do it anyway. I want to serve you. I want to honor you. I'm going to destroy all these pagan gods. And if Satan brings it on, he brings it on. So this one story, the Testament of Job, puts that whole thing in a much different light, puts God in a better light, and was cathartic for me. That healed a wound in me, a spiritual wound that I've had. I'm 51 years old. I've had this thing my entire life, ever since I heard of Job. I'm like, I've even had prayers as recent, a month ago, I think I prayed. I'm like, Father, don't do a Job on me. Like, I've done that already. I went through that in 2002 and all that. I'm like, yeah, I hope I'm serving you. I hope I'm honoring you, but please don't give Satan any ideas, or any freedom to do anything, I had this messed up view of God because I didn't have an understanding of Job. So anyway, maybe that helps somebody else out there. And if you guys are interested, I'm going to tell you what, I'll put the link in the chat room for you. And if you guys haven't read the Testament of Job, man, wow, what a story there. And the only other thing I had, on the shaving the hair deal, I liked your analogy of being like symbolizing like being born again. I think there's definitely a validity to that. But one of the other things that I learned in my journey was in seeking alternative forms of healing and stuff like that was that your hair records stuff. Like it records your issues. And so you can actually take samples of your hair and submit it to certain labs, and they can look at your hair and determine what you're deficient in, like what vitamins and minerals and stuff you're deficient in, and what maybe toxins and stuff you're dealing with. Like it functions a lot like blood in the sense that it records stuff. So there are several instances for different situations in the Bible where somebody's commanded to shave the hair off their head. And even a woman, like if they captured a woman in conquest, she was to be, her head was shaved, and it's out with the old, in with the new. So whatever had been recorded that was not good in you is shaved off, and the new growth will represent the newness. So if a person is getting healed of something, then you got to get rid of that recording, so to speak. So it's a sense of starting over, but I think that there's also very much a genetic aspect to this. Again, a lot of these things we don't understand. Yahuwah understands how he made us. So he understands, don't eat that animal because it's not good for you. I know how I created the animal. I know how I created you. When he tells you to shave your head because of this, that, and the other thing, there's a reason for it. There are spiritual and symbolic, allegorical meanings to these things, I agree, but I think that there are also genetic, physical reasons for these things that he knows that only modern science today is only starting to catch up to understand. And then there's also the issue of separation when your wife is on her period. Now, I think again, this is thus thinketh Rob. This is not thus saith the Lord. So you take it to prayer out there. I think that a lot of these commands were for a nomadic society that was going to be stuck in the wilderness for 40 years. And so a lot of this stuff was designed simply for hygiene, and also for the fact that the tabernacle was there with them in the wilderness, and that is the holiest of the holy right there. So you needed to be clean so you didn't get wiped out by the holiness there. You needed to be set apart in order to be commingle with Yahuwah, who is the ultimate set apart Holy One. So there's that aspect of it. So is that still an issue for us today in the 21st century with modern plumbing and stuff like that? I don't know. Maybe not. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. There are people in the Torah community who do that. We do. So, if your wife's on a period, okay, fine. We have a time of separation. We still fellowship together, but we're not sleeping in the same bed. There may be a reason for that. There may be something in the aspect of the shedding of the menstrual blood and how it affects you and whatever. I don't know. He knows more than I know. So if he said to do it, maybe we should do it. That's just my position. I'm not telling anybody else what to do. I'm not preaching to you. I'm just telling you what my understanding of it is, because some people get wrapped around the axle on stuff like this. But anyway, those are my thoughts on what you both shared. And anything else that you guys want to share on what I just said, or Jake on what Juan said, or Juan on what Jake said?
I did want to make one comment. Juan was mentioning about how the scriptures really reveal to us these amazing, deep things. And I've really started to kind of wrap my mind around, some of the things written in the Psalms. Psalm 119 talks about how the Torah, the statutes, are much more valuable than fine jewels and gold. And just yesterday's little portion of Psalms I was reading through talks about how, because of meditating on the statutes, he's wiser than all his teachers and wiser than the ancients. And as we're talking about these things and we're studying into like the the clean and unclean and the times of separation, and and you think about other like of these nuanced commandments, like don't mix fabrics or don't eat that animal or this animal because it's unclean to you. Whenever I think about as we study out these aspects of Scripture, we see these things that seem very nuanced. It makes me realize there is enormous deep scientific principles that can be proven after the fact. But the act of faith of saying, if God is God, then let's obey him, demonstrates, one, that we trust him, but also we reap the benefits of these incredibly provable scientific principles that are hidden kind of in the commandments themselves. And it's only after the fact, like, that we learn scientifically that there's a reason you don't mix wool and linen.
Looks like Jake Jake froze. He turned upside down and froze. I wonder.
Yeah, exactly.
He may have hit the button or something. Maybe booped. Let me switch over.
Yeah, that's a bit of funny,
It's good.
It's the other way around.
Yeah. Well,
so yeah, just to continue what Jake was saying, and and to comment as well on when you said, Rob. First, thank you for bringing this additional clarity about the sources and reason for sickness. I fully agree with you. I think in what we see in this, connecting what I say and what I see here in the portion, is that if we do something in purpose, the result, if we commit sin on purpose, the result could be that we can get ill. So, but there are multiple reasons and situations that as you mentioned, Rob, that we can get sick. I was thinking while you were discussing is that that's one of the reasons that Yahuwah will create a new earth and a new heaven. Mm-hmm. Because this current creation is totally corrupted. Is tamei, is defiled.
Yeah.
So it needs to go through a process of cleansing, and this is impacting everything around us. You described about the water, the food, and multiple other things that is causing us to get ill. But the only one that's going to be able to remove all of that is Yahushua HaMashiach in his second coming. But what is important to keep in mind is that, as it is written also in Deuteronomy, we have a decision in front of us. It's two ways: the narrow way or the wide one. Or if we, in one moment, and this is something that we need to do every day, one moment we want to jump from this narrow way to the other one, we are going to get trapped, and that's cause consequences. But one thing that you mentioned and also resonated to me, and we discussed this last week, one of the most important things in Torah, and the Yahushua was saying this, is compassion. Mm-hmm. And we cannot judge others. We need to have compassion on them. And then, you remember I was sharing last week is that the whole reason of the leper that needed to put the finger on their lip and start to shout unclean, mm-hmm. It's not for the people to run away or for the people to judge. It's for the people to have compassion in the same way that when Miriam got leprosy, when she was speaking wrong about the bad things about Moses, what they did, what Moshe did, what Aaron did, they had compassion on Miriam. They started to pray to Yahuwah for her healing. So all this situation about the sickness, being unclean, and so on, is not to judge other people. It's just to pray for them, to have compassion on them, for Yahuwah to, with his loving commitment, his love, to heal the people, and so on. The main take for me, Rob, in this case, and you were discussing as well about the leprosy in the house or leprosy in the garments. It's about what I said about the connection with the potential connection with unclean spirits. And was just remembering that garments, clothes, carry stuff. We see my dad has a lot of experience with the clean spirits in the past, and then he told me a lot of stories, and I was able to see it with my own eyes as well, about how these unclean spirits could be somehow related to the clothes of people. And it's interesting because we see the same situation happening in the other way, in the positive way, in the book of Acts, when Paul was sending some part of his garments, cloth, and people was getting healed with cloth.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think in this fact of the garments being infected or defiled, it's impossible for me not to think on this potential connection with unclean spirits, and the reason of what, when we are in the status of Tamei, more than the physical impurity, that for sure, and I think it's good you mentioned as well, Rob, that the Torah and the word of Yahuwah is applicable in different levels, in a physical realm and also in the spiritual realm. So physically speaking, it makes total sense, and that's part of the wisdom that I was sharing at the beginning. But spiritually speaking, I can see this connection that when we are defiled because we committed sin, we are in the status of Tamei. We need to get back, because somehow we are surrounded by these unclean spirits, and the only way to get back is through the process of cleansing and healing of Yahushua HaMashiach. So that's what I wanted to share.
Yeah, amen. Good stuff, bro. Well, looks like that takes us to the top of the hour. You have any final thoughts, or was that it?
No, that's it. That's my thoughts today.
So I noticed when I was looking for that clip on the book of Job. Wait a minute. Jake Grant says, he just texted me. Hang on a second.
Okay.
Sorry about that. My phone died. He said Shabbat Shalom. All right. So Jake's phone died. But when I was searching, I saw that it looks like, I don't know if it was Adam and Jake, but I saw on Parable of Vineyard, he just released a video yesterday, I guess, called the Aaronic Priestly Blessing. So I guess it's a song. He put the Aaronic Blessing to a song, and it's only 3 minutes long. So let's go ahead and I'll share it.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, that's my first
Actually,
time.
Jake talked about it last week, I think.
Did he?
So
Did he was going to do something like that?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Well, maybe this is it. Let me switch over here, and we'll see.
Okay.
יברכך יחוה וישמרך יאר יחוה פניו לך וחונקה יישא יחוה פניו לך לך שלום יישא יחוה פניו לך ויעשה לך שלום ויעשה לך שלום ויעשה לך שלום. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious is unto you, Yahuwah. Lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.
Nice. Wow, that's cool. That's awesome. Well, we had it in Hebrew and
Yeah, it was
English.
very nice.
We had it in Hebrew and English. You want to take us out in Spanish, and we'll say Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Sure, let me look for it.
I'll post the link in the meantime in the chat room if you guys want to share that song on your social media. Very cool. Man, they're just knocking them out. They're doing some really good work.
Yeah, it is very good actually, and it's very peaceful. This one,
Yeah.
especially for the blessing. I really like it.
Yeah.
So I brought somebody to
I know, you got a
to
guest
coordinate
there.
a
Hey.
minute. Okay, so let's do it. Here is in Spanish. So it says the following: Yahuwah te bendiga y te guarde. Yahuwah haga resplandecer su rostro sobre ti y tenga de ti misericordia. Yahuwah alce sobre ti su rostro y te dé paz, te dé shalom. Amen.
Amen. All right, so there we have it in Hebrew, English, and Spanish. All right, thank you so much, Juan Carlos. We'll see you back next week. Thank you guys for watching the Virtual House Church, and we say Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat's the Hebrew word for Sabbath, and Shalom, peace. So we're saying have a peaceful, restful Sabbath. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.